What's up, geeks and gamers? It's Odin coming to you with another video! And today we're going to be talking about the box office for this weekend, February 8th to 10th. And it has actually been kind of interesting because movies that were supposed to come out much bigger than they ended up being ended up underperforming, which I think is a very, very clear sign that just because your box office numbers and your box office tracking are saying one thing does not mean that that one thing is actually going to happen. This is a shout out since it's about a month away now from the Captain Marvel premiere, which everyone is saying it's gonna break records, 160 to 180 million dollar opening, and oh my gosh, it's gonna be amazing, and look at the box office tracking. But Lego Movie 2 has shown us that box office tracking does not always pan out. I mean, we could have just looked at Solo Star Wars Story to see that, seeing that they were thinking that that movie was going to make 150, 160 million when it came out, and then it made 103 for the total 3-day weekend when it came out for Memorial Day. Yeah, it's interesting how that was a $50 million difference or so. Lego Movie, not nearly as drastic, but still they were expecting the film to come out around 50 to 55 million, and it only ended up making around 34.4. So we have new top 3 movies, and they're all new releases. So we have had a very slow February so far, very slow beginning to the year. Obviously, we still have a couple of movies that have been doing well for a long time. Like Glass is still performing very well. The Upside is still performing very well, and they would have been in the top 3 had we not had any huge releases. But Lego Movie 2, no matter what you say about it, is indeed going to bring in those audiences. They are going to bring in the kids, it's going to bring in the families, and so it's going to end up probably making a little bit more over its run. However, for a total theater count of 4,303 theaters, that is quite a low number to me for an opening. Like in my mind, if you are below 50 million for this kind of film with those many theaters, it tells me that something's not quite right. Something's not going on. I think you might start. This would be evidence of actual fatigue if you ever wanted to agree with or believe in the term. And I really do think there is Lego Movie fatigue, because think about it, we had the Lego Movie, which I thought was an overrated piece of garbage. That's just from my perspective. You then had the Lego Batman movie, which I thought was fantastic. You also had the Lego Ninjago movie, which did not get nearly as much press and support because it was done by the same company but different people and was not connected to the overall storyline. And so it was like one of those things where, like, okay, I guess this is something that we should go watch. And so in my mind, I honestly think that they have kind of just gone too much with it. I think that people are tired of sequels. I think people are tired of the Lego Movie in general. And so that's the reason why this film is just not doing as well as it can. Speaking of that, we're going to have a couple movies coming out over the next few weeks that could eventually, dethrone Lego Movie for being at the top. I don't think things look good, because if a normal 50% drop, which is very standard for any movie from week 1 to week 2, that would mean that the film would come in just around $17 million for next weekend. And yeah, that's okay, but for a movie that is expected to be a multi-$100 million film, this film looks to me as if it might barely be $400 million by the end of its run when you take in the worldwide totals. We're still waiting to see just how well it does overseas. However, the Lego Movie in general is definitely more of a property that'll do well in the United States, and we'll dive into the actual first Lego Movies numbers just to dive into that. But What Men Want, which is a movie that I've talked about several times already, because the Rotten Tomatoes consensus score, even though it's rotten all around, it's gotten terrible reviews from both critics and audiences alike. The critics' consensus is that overall it's a good time, and the only bad thing about it is uneven. I can't imagine why they would say that. I cannot imagine why they would do that. And if you want to know more about Rotten Tomatoes and what they said about What Men Want, and also about just Rotten Tomatoes being biased in general, go check out the video I just dropped on my channel earlier today. Cold Pursuit, whatever the hell that is, came in at number 3. And then Stalwarts, The Upside, and Glass. Yes, The Upside is finally no longer in the top 3, but it's still in the top 5, and it's still making money. It still made $7.2 million, a 16% drop from last weekend. Glass with a 32.7% drop, and still in a lot of theaters. So these two films are still doing very well, and as I've said constantly about those films before, it is interesting to me that these films that got just destroyed by critics overall are being vastly supported by audiences. The Glass, the movie Glass getting positive ratings, Upside getting positive ratings from audiences as well. The Upside being attacked most likely because of the fact that Kevin Hart was in it, and Kevin Hart is bad now because he said quote unquote homophobic things, and therefore he shouldn't host the Oscars. That's just unacceptable. We cannot possibly accept this. I know I'm kind of doing my Pelion voice there, if anyone is a fan of the Thrawn trilogy read by Mark Thompson. But anyway, it is interesting to me that those films that overall got panned by critics are actually doing very well with audiences, and I'm very happy to see that. Gonna try and hopefully finally see Glass today. I have so many movies that I need to see. We'll see if I'm finally able to get off my lazy butt and actually go out and see them. And then the only other kind of major release, again, 2,500 theaters, I think is nothing to snuff at, was the so-called Prodigy, which opened with $6 million, and it was a budget of $6 million, so the film has a very good chance of being breaking even and profitable, but it's not going to be a breakout horror film like others have been in the past. I would say you could look to Glass to see what an example of paying less and getting more out of a film would be an example. But let's actually just break down the numbers themselves. But as you see here, again, admitted by the experts themselves, Lego Movie 2 debuts weaker than expected, and as it says here, $20 million below what they expected. Expectations of franchise fatigue seems to have settled in rather quickly, and to me, this is a great example of that. Now, some people might say, well, why is it you didn't say that about Solo: A Star Wars Story? Well, we know that there were a lot of other factors that led to that film losing $200 million. I don't think that Lego Movie 2 at this point is going to lose money necessarily, and that's the reason why I would say that, yes, there's probably fatigue, but it's also because you're focusing on such a specific set of films that, yes, it captured magic in a bottle when the first movie came out, and yes, the Batman movie was great too, but it didn't do nearly as well as the first one did. And so now I think you're getting to the point where people are like, okay, I'm kind of getting tired of this animation. It's just not really, this to me is a franchise that should be straight to DVD. Like, to me, this franchise, the Lego Movie, the concept overall makes more sense in a straight to DVD fashion. Now, I know these are the people that got fired off of Solo, which I think is hilarious, and I really do hope that overall, if this film can break $400 million and also at the same time be profitable, I think that would be a wonderful giant middle finger to Kathleen Kennedy and to anyone else involved in their firing for the movie. So I just I can't wait to follow. I can't wait to follow how much money this movie makes, because that is going to be the comparison constantly, is Lego Movie 2 versus Solo, because this is the first major film given to us by those two people, given to us by Lord and Miller, since they were fired from Solo, that ended up costing the studio a couple $100 million. So, looking into these numbers, it's doing well domestically, $34.4 million. Foreign market, $18.1 million. So, not doing too crazy, not doing too well overall overseas, but it is also still very early. Looking at the foreign market, it is only being said to have opened in South Korea, and so we really don't have a whole lot of countries yet. We haven't gotten official numbers yet, because the overseas market, it's not always at the same time. Domestic numbers, we always get around 10 a.m. on Sundays. When it comes to the foreign numbers, they usually trickle in throughout the day, which is why it'll come into play when I talk about another movie later on down the line. But anyway, $34.4 million. The production budget is not listed here, but if I just do a quick doobly-doo, Lego Movie 2 budget, to find out just how much this movie cost overall. It was made for around $100 million. So again, made for about $100 million, as my dog is destroying a box, because that is just what the Hounds of Asgard do. So $100 million, it's already made $52.5 million. I suspect by the end of its run, it has a chance to make it back. However, I would say that, in all honesty, just again, based off of these numbers here, unless we see, because this is the reason why I always try and be as clear as possible, and I always try and be honest with you guys, unless we see some kind of crazy numbers coming from the foreign market, this to me spells a movie that potentially could lose money. I'm just going to point that out right now, knowing that it was made for $100 million, which means that the overall cost was $150 when you add in marketing, adding in the fact that most movies tend to make 60% of their entire box office take within the first 2 weeks. If this indeed goes forward and this movie makes around $100 million by the end of week 2 when you add in the foreign market, that would mean that there's about 40% left to make over, which means they would end just up around $160 million or so, which would theoretically be enough to make, to make money. But as you said before, not enough to keep up with the Solo movie that made $400 million. However, the difference would be that this movie would probably end up being a break-even, small profit movie versus Solo, which of course just lost money. What men want? What do men want? Apparently not this movie, because it made $19 million on a $20 million budget. So yeah, it's going to make its money back. I mean, it's just based on the nature of the film industry. When you spend so little on a movie, it's almost impossible to not make the money back, but it's also not going to make much profit off it either. And this is just if you don't know what the movie is about, Essentially, it is taking the concept of what women want from the 2000 film by Mel Gibson, or starring Mel Gibson, which was fantastic and amazing. I think it had some really great commentary in there. But now they decided to do the gender swap, and according to Rotten Tomatoes, the gender swap works, even though it's sub 50s, under 50% for both audience and audience and critic scores. So this film is gonna make, again, break even, not make much of a profit, but still overall looking okay. Cold Pursuit, I have no idea what this movie is about. Never heard it before in my life. But production budget's not there, so who knows? Cold Pursuit actually. Oh wait, here we go. That's why I love it. I love it when they do this. The Players. I love when it gives me cast. So this is the Liam Neeson film. This is a film I hope makes money, because of the fact that people are now saying that Liam Neeson is a racist for the comments that he said, which is just stupid. Is so stupid. He says, so in an interview, if you don't know this, in an interview, Liam Neeson said that there was a time in his life when he was walking around outside and he wanted someone, he says, like, yeah, I really hope that a black guy comes up to me so I can beat him up. And he says that as if something that he was saying at the time in his head. He never says he did it. He just said he was thinking at the time, and then he's thinking back on that because he thinks, "Oh my gosh, how stupid I was," or how I was in such a dark place, and I'm glad that I've come out of it. And now everyone's taking his words, trying to say, "Oh, look at that, he's a racist." He thought at one point in time of maybe doing a bad action against somebody who was a person of color. And it's like that. Okay, so he just said he didn't do anything. He may have thought about it, but guess what? He also realizes that it was a bad thing for him to think about. But apparently even that now is bad. So they're going after him. They're going after this movie. Because of that, I would recommend, hey, if you're going to go see anything, go support this movie just to go support Liam Neeson. Again, I know very little else about the film, but if Liam Neeson's in it, you know he's going to be a badass in it. You got Emmy Rossum in it, Laura Dern. Oh, that might be the one thing that will keep Star Wars fans away, is that Laura Dern's in it. But Laura Dern is not a bad person. She was just a person that got hired for a role in a really bad movie. So I would blame the movie and the direction and the writing of that movie, of The Last Jedi, over than anything else. But Laura Dern overall, I don't hate her as an actress overall. Prodigy is another horror film, so therefore you don't know anyone in it. It's an indie horror film that cost $6 million to make. It's so funny how Hollywood is like, oh, we'll spend very little on it, and then we'll put it out there. Again, Orion Pictures here. We'll put it out there, and we'll make bank off of it. Well, you kind of have to make it a good movie, or at least have a good marketing campaign, of which the Prodigy didn't, because I've never heard of it before, and it's still made $6 million. Production of $6 million means that it needs to make around, $9 to $10 million. Yeah, it's gonna break even, but it's not going to be that big of a money getter either. So let's get into some older films that have been out for a while. So Aquaman, what is going on with Aquaman? Is it going to reach $1.2, $1.3 billion? I would say more likely than not, it's going to end around 1.2. I had a very, very hopeful expression before. I thought maybe, just maybe, it'll have enough steam left to get it to that that $1.3, $1.4 billion. Unfortunately, it is indeed slowing down. It has not, this weekend it opened in Japan, but we have not gotten those numbers yet. As I said, those numbers come in a little bit later. That is the only large market that is yet to come in for it. It usually does around 30 million or so for comic book films. This film might be enough to maybe get it a little bit on the higher end. Maybe 50, 60 million. Some people might disagree and say, well, other films didn't make that much, so why would this one? I don't know. I just think that overall it's been received quite positively. And so the reason my mindset was at 1.3 before was because I thought that the foreign market would continue to give money to this film, and then when you would add Japan at the very end, I thought and suspected that maybe because it has given movies over $100 million before, maybe, just maybe, it would bring this foreign number up to $1 billion. Doesn't look like that's going to be the case. However, it is still making bank nonetheless. It is still a huge success for the DCEU, and also I think this bodes very well for Shazam to follow in its footsteps, and I think that that very well could be a very high-grossing film, especially since it comes out just a little bit before Captain Marvel does, or rather a little bit after Captain Marvel, and so therefore people are going to be like, oh, let's go see this instead, because let's go give our money to the DCEU, the DCEU, let's go give our money to Warner Brothers rather than giving it to all this nonsense going on with Captain Marvel. Glass is making bank. Like, seriously, at this point, for anyone to say otherwise, it's so funny that some people are like saying, oh, it's not going to do that well, etc. $220 million worldwide on a $20 million budget is insane. $30 million to make this film and to market it. 60% of that box office total. This means that this film has already made over $100 million in profit, and it's still making money. It was still in the top 5. So this film is going to make well over $100 million. Has already made over $100 million just in net profit alone. So, very successful movie. Cannot wait to see it. M. Night Shyamalan, yeah, it might not have been as successful as some other films, but you know what? At the end of the day, it is still doing very well. As you see in the Unbreakable series, It is behind Split, and it probably will not match what Split was able to do. That being said, I think it's still going to do well it's still going to do very well overall. And as I said, the upside, $37.5 million production budget. People were crapping all over this film because Kevin Hart was in it and he was a supposed homophobe. And yet, this film, $94.7 million worldwide. Nothing crazy, but still the movie's profitable, and that is a good thing. And kudos to you, Kevin Hart. And seriously, man, keep on doing what you're doing, because you are just ignoring all the nonsense that has been going on. You're just saying, hey, I'm going to keep doing me, and people still like me. People are still going to support me, and dude, I have your back, man. You could have made the Oscars great again. If only they had listened to just common reason. But guys, what are y'all's thoughts on this? Do you think the Lego Movie 2 is suffering from some kind of franchise fatigue? I mean, really, realistically, there have not been that many Lego major releases. Again, I mentioned just a couple. There's the Lego Movie 1, which, again, I personally did not like. When it didn't get nominated for Best Picture, I was very happy, just because I didn't like the film. Lego Batman movie was great. Loved it. Own it. It's fantastic. Lego Ninjago film, I just didn't even bother seeing it because it just came across as that straight-to-DVD movie. And Lego Movie 2, I really do think it's falling into that trap. I think that when it comes to these types of films, especially ones that are based off of, a franchise and based off of a game, or based off a, a building block structure system game, that overall it's just not going to be able to hold up forever. And so this is a franchise, I think, that very well soon will be put into that category of, okay, we'll continue making them, but straight to DVD. And honestly, I think that they'll spend less money and they'll make more money in the process. But guys, I would love to hear your thoughts on all these films in the comments below. If you like this video, smash that like button, give us a thumbs up, give us a subscribe. You're all amazing and beautiful people. And again, guys, go check out my channel, the Odin's Movie Blog channel, to find out why, indeed, Rotten Tomatoes is clearly an SJW organization, a political front for some really bad. I'm going to show you. There is a connection, guys. So here's something just to grind on for a second. There is a connection of Rotten Tomatoes with a channel known as the Young Turks. And if you know anything about the Young Turks, that should tell you all you need to know about just how crucial that connection is and why that's a big deal. I'm going to leave you with that. Anyway, guys, thank you all so much for watching. Have a wonderful day. And as always, God bless.